Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I'm Dee.
And I'm Rhonda, and together we are the Sake Sisters. For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesistersocialclub.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Switchblade Sisters Social Club.
Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our brand new and improved podcast, Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. My name's Dee, and this is my sister Rhonda, and we are the Sake Sisters.
Hi!
Hi. All right. Oh, it's the big reveal time.
Okay.
We're just gonna
Wait. You don't want to do chit-chat?
What do you want to chit-chat about?
What did you have for lunch?
I haven't had lunch yet. It's 11:30.
What
did you have?
I already had my lunch early because I wanted to fit it in between recording sessions. So I had a cheese and onion pasty from the petrol station, which was surprisingly good. And you know, I remember seeing a Facebook post about this, about the kind of people that buy like pre-peeled tangerines and pre-boiled eggs, and that's me. I bought and ate 2 pre-boiled eggs. It was already peeled.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I will have lunch when we finish this episode. And yesterday I was super proud of myself because I batch cooked a whole bunch of vegetable soup.
That's some real adulting, batch cooking.
I know. Well, because I tried to do proper adulting and I signed up to Riverford, which I'm really enjoying. And they send me vegetables. Well, I say they send me vegetables. I have received one box so far. And it was amazing, but I'm like, what do I do with these? I just made vegetable soup, and I think that's what I'm going to be doing throughout winter. But yeah, I was very happy because it tasted delish. My friend Lisa Mafia, she very kindly, I house sat for her Chihuahua Alfie and her cats Dolly and Ollie while she went away to Poland, and she brought me back this amazing garlic salt.
Oh, do you know what I love?
Garlic
I only
and
ever
salt.
found garlic. Everything with garlic, everything has to have garlic or onions. If not, it like tastes like nothing. But I had it back in the day. An Australian colleague who told me about chicken salt. Have you ever heard of it?
Is it like the chicken seasoning that you can just put on anything?
Oh, I mean, maybe, but it was kind of like you put it on your fries. So it's not like to season a chicken with. It's like to put on your fries, but it's chicken flavored salt. And I only ever found it once. It makes everything taste good.
Well, I'm vegetarian, so if that was actual
I'm sure there's no real chickens in it.
Okay, well, I did find in Lidl once this like Polish seasoning, which was amazing, that you could just put on anything, and it really did make everything taste better. So
what I will say though is I think in the UK people don't season enough. I don't think you season your meat enough here.
No, there's a lack of seasoning. Yeah, and as a vegetarian, again, that's a big problem because having unseasoned vegetarian food is just like,
tastes like baby food. Yeah.
So this soup, I flavored it heavily with a bunch of different herbs, but also this garlic salt, which made it just taste chef's kiss. So I'm super excited about having some more of that later. It has sweet potatoes. It has butter beans in it.
I don't know why that's funny.
I know, it just is. So
I'm impressed by your adulting, because batch cooking, that's the future of adulting, you know?
Well, it's just because I was like, I gotta cook all these vegetables before they go off, and I don't know what to do with them individually, so I'm just gonna put them all in one big
I've always had a problem with cooking. It's just the preparation of it, you know?
Yeah. I love cooking when I have nothing else to do, but I just always have other things to do. And I had this drama during the first couple of weeks of lockdown. My bathroom leaked into my kitchen and the ceiling fell in. And it was at a time where you weren't allowed to have people in your house, and getting stuff done was a nightmare. So it took so long to get the kitchen sorted. And I have to really like my space to be able to be productive in it, you know? And so when it was just a mess, it was just really, really hard to motivate myself to cook anything. which is why my lockdown 15 became lockdown 15 stone or whatever, because we were just taking away all the time.
You know what? I thought when we had the new kitchen put in before the summer that I'd start liking cooking, but I still hate it. And like, I like it even less now having kids, because one has a food disorder called ARFID. So she only eats, which is very common in autistic people. So as you know, she only eats dry beige food. The other, he's got reasonable eating habits, but he has, he likes his routines. He has to have the same thing in the same day.
And he's very particular about his food. If he wants something, then he has to have that.
Then there's no substitute. Substitute will do. So basically, like, we have to have the same thing on Mondays, same thing on Tuesdays, same thing on Wednesday, and it becomes very uninspiring. And
you don't want to be cooking like two meals, like two
or
three separate things.
Do you know what? In our house, we have like 3 or 4 separate meals some days. So it just, cooking and food is just, I associate it with like,
and just the fact that you have to do it every day.
I know. But I'll tell you what, actually planning your meals ahead so you don't have to think about it, because the most stressful thing is, like, you finish work or you come back from the school run, you open the fridge, you're like, what the fuck am I going to do with all this stuff? How am I going to put all this together and make something edible?
Mm-hmm. And then you're like, fuck it, we'll get takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, well, this happens sometimes 2-3 times a week, which is, enjoyable, but not good for the bank balance, or cholesterol. But yeah, I wish, laundry and cooking, those are 2 jobs I just never began to enjoy,
I'll tell you, the only thing that has improved, my attitude towards has improved, is cleaning.
Oh yeah.
Because of podcasts.
Well,
do you know? Why? Because I love putting on a podcast and doing the cleaning. Like, I don't love it. I'd rather listen to my podcast on the sofa. But the fact that I have podcasts to keep me company while I do certain things definitely makes it a lot easier.
Do you know what? Cleaning I can do. I have a shortage of time to do it, but cleaning and tidying I can do, because I like to have a nice, clean, orderly, minimalist space. And when my house is in disarray, so is my head,
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I've only just got across to Paul. I don't think he realized how much, like, this has always been the case for me, but my space has to be how I like it. And obviously that is very relative to each different person, but I have to be happy with the space to be able to relax in it and to enjoy being in it.
Yeah, I can't have, like, if I'm working on a desk, and I work in several different places in my home, and it really depends on where it's when the kids are at home being looked after by their other parent, i.e. my husband, then I work at my desk. When they're not here, when they're at school and I'm working, I actually work at my coffee table. But I can't have anything on it because it just disrupts my thinking, I'm
the same. So that's the Switchblade Sisters Housekeeping Club.
Yep.
Shall we merge?
How did we get so boring? Oh, what have you been listening to this week?
Well, I told you last week I've been listening to Heidi World. I say last week. It was an hour ago when we recorded last week's episode. So yeah, still listening to that.
Do you know what I like even more than like listening to a podcast or watching a documentary is talking about it with someone after.
Oh, I know. When you find out that someone is into true crime. Like, I remember once being in Glastonbury, where everyone's a bit cuckoo bananas, but talking to a girl who was actually waiting for her boyfriend, who was the bartender, to finish off work. And I just got talking to her. I was there with friends, and we got on the topic of true crime. And I remember having a long conversation with her about this book called, it's called like Buried Bones. Oh, I'm gonna have to find it. But basically, it was about how the science, forensic science, kind of expanded to include things like forensic botany, forensic epidemiology, where they can now tell by the larvae in your guts how long you have been decomposing for and where you would have been. And basically it was this guy who got donated a bunch of pig carcasses, because pig carcasses are the most closely similar to human carcasses, and he buried them across the university campus where he worked in order to study different forms of like if a body is half submerged in water or buried 3 meters deep or in this kind of environment, how does it decompose? And so that they can, when they find a body, they can know more about it from the evidence on the body and the state that the body's in. And like things like, for example, if you bury something, you will never get that soil composition on top of the thing you buried, the person you buried, the same as the composition around it. It will either be more densely packed or less densely packed, which will affect the water content of that soil. And so that's how they can find out if there's something buried in an area and stuff like that. But anyways, yes, I went on and on and on and on and on about stuff that other people might not give a shit about.
Oh, I know. Do you know what? One thing, going back to my food menu thing, every Thursday, Shay, who's my son, goes with Jim, who's my husband, to the chip shop. We got a chip shop around the corner called Chiswick Fish and Chips. It's really good. It didn't used to be good. It used to be 1 star, but then a new couple bought it, and it's really good now. Anyway, so shout out to them. So Jay normally insists on going with Jim to the chip shop, but Jim wasn't home from work and we had to have dinner. So I took him to the chip shop. And so Jay always speaks to the owners and they love him. They think he's a genius because he's like memorized every calendar till like 2034 now. Yeah. So I met them for the first
2034?
time. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I met this couple that owns the fish and chip shop for the first time. Shay's been meeting them every week for like God knows how long. They've been going there for fish and chips. Anyway, so I met them and they're Turkish and they're so lovely. As soon as they told me they're Turkish, I started talking about Turkey's heroic role in solving the Jamal Khashoggi murder. And obviously, for me, that's a very natural thing to bring up in conversation, you know? Clearly, it's not for other people. But anyway, yeah.
So it's like when we meet other people that are Palestinian and then we just start talking about Palestine.
Yeah. So that conversation didn't quite land the way I wanted it to.
Well, maybe that should be a podcast episode. Oh, maybe not, because we don't want to be assassinated.
No. Yeah. No. Do you know what? Because one of my biggest clients is a Middle Eastern news outlet, because a lot of my work is still copy editing and the other half is social media. And every time an article lands in my inbox about the Egyptian prison system or MBS in Saudi Arabia, I'm like, fucking hell, I don't want to touch this.
Even though it's still a scary world out there.
Yeah, it is.
I think people forget living in this country, in the UK, that some scary shit still goes down.
Yeah, it does.
When people talk about whenever
the executions are happening in Iran because of the protesters of the Mahsa Amini.
I know, death. And like when people in the UK talk about, oh, this is turning into a nanny state, it's like, well, look,
so you don't want to know what I'm listening to?
I want to know what you're listening to.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so what I've been listening to, podcast-wise and music-wise, is of an evening, I like to listen to some Enya these days. I do.
Speak of adulting.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what? I find like the older you get, the more stressed you get. And you just need to listen to some relaxing music. So, like, yeah.
I hear you. I listen to solfeggio, which is basically like spa music, but it's different frequencies that supposedly help relax the mind.
Honestly, if you listen to Enya, it really has such a relaxing effect. And I actually forgot how many good songs she's got. Everyone always remembers Orinoco Flow, you know, the Sail Away song.
Mm-hmm. What other?
Some good ones. Oh, I listen to a lot of film score music. Like Hans Zimmer.
No, but what other songs has she got?
Caribbean Blue. I don't know. Sometimes I have to Shazam them because I don't know what they're called, you know? I just tell Alexa to play Enya, but I always end up Shazamming the songs to find out their names. Because like I remember the songs, I just don't know what they're called, you know?
But well, yeah, I'm working in my friend's shop on Wednesday, so I might put Enya on the playlist.
Put some Enya, yeah. Honestly, like the songs are beautiful. But also so fucking relaxing. You can't be stressed out listening to Enya. And do you know who else I want to give a shout out to? Do you know who else is so supportive? Is the Wine Time podcast girls.
Oh, I love them. Yeah.
You know what?
Shout out to Wine Time. They're amazing.
Yeah. Check them out. Because you know what? What I love about the podcast world is people are so supportive.
Yeah. Oh, and Enter the Dark. We love them too.
Yes. Check them out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we appreciate you.
We do appreciate you. We love
That's
you guys.
That's what I've been listening to. Oh yeah, and film score music. Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman. All the greats.
We are talking about Danny Elfman because we're talking about Wednesday, huh?
Yeah.
Have you watched it yet?
Finished, yeah. Loved it.
Mm-hmm. Don't ruin it for me, because I watched the first 2 episodes with Paul. Paul says that it can be one of my shows rather than one of our shows, meaning just carry on watching it without me. I don't know why he didn't get so into it. And but yeah, so I'm saving it, when you can properly just binge, no interruptions, not doing something else. Yeah.
I liked it visually, and the music, everything.
Oh, it's so beautifully shot.
Yeah. Anything Tim Burton and Danny Elfman is going to be good. It's
going to be good. And also, I know we talked about all of this, but it's just so pretty, and like the castle that they used as a school.
Yeah, I know.
That actress, Jenny Ortega, fucking phenomenal.
I know. She's so cute. She's such a good actress.
I know. I love her. I just want to adopt her.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting?
No.
Side note, the autism community have completely adopted her.
Have they? Why? Is she autistic?
No, but the character, Wednesday.
Oh.
Saw some
think Wednesday is autistic?
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I see that.
Completely.
Oh, well, good. I like that we're living...
And I wish that was mentioned. I really wish that was mentioned, and that was part of the storyline. Because I feel like that would be good.
Do you think that they did that on purpose, or do you think that it's... Do you know what I mean? Like, is she meant to be autistic?
I think the Addams Family started in a time where people didn't really know what autism was.
Oh, for sure.
But honestly, I mean, obviously I follow loads of accounts to do with autism, follow lots of autistic advocates, charities, organizations. I work with a few. So it's a world that I live in. And they have completely adopted Wednesday as a poster girl.
You know me. Yeah. I know you know this, but me and my partner Paul are we are going to adopt at some point, and
I'd love to adopt her.
I see kids, I know she's probably like 25. I see kids in real life and like on TV, and I'm like, oh, if I could just adopt that child, I'd be so happy.
I used to think that when I was teaching. There's some of them that you just like a lot.
Yeah. More than others. Yes. You heard it here first. Teachers have favorites.
But you can't show it, but
No. But what did you do? Did you have kids you just didn't like?
What I would do with the kids that I didn't like, and I'm a firm believer that the ones who are the most unlikable are the ones that actually sometimes need the most love.
Oh, for sure. They probably have the worst. If they're that damaged by that young an age, they've had things happen.
Equally, I will say that there are some who are just really fucking spoiled, and some of them don't have that excuse, and that's obvious when it comes around to parents' evening and you see the interactions between the parents and the kids.
It's sad.
Yeah, so what I would say is, when I had kids that I didn't like, my strategy would be, and okay, didn't like, that's harsh to say, because you know what, I never actually thought to myself, do I like them or don't like them? You don't really have time to think about that, because you got to teach them all, you have to treat them all really well. But when I had ones that were, let's say, less endearing, I would fucking force myself to like them and shower them with kindness and try to break that down. Do you know what I mean? I did it. I very rarely...
I'm just thinking that all my teachers used to be very nice to me, but is it because they thought I was unlikable?
You were a geek.
Oh, I wasn't.
We were both geeks. Nerd. We hung out more with teachers than we did kids. But but no, I mean, this one. I'm going to tell you a really interesting story, actually, if we have time.
We do.
So there's this one kid. I won't say his name because I can't, but or shouldn't. But I really actually thought he was one of the rudest kids, and I actually said that to his parents. I said the first time I actually went as far as to say that to a parent, that I've never experienced rudeness like this from any student in all my career.
How was he rude? Like, what would he say or do?
Like, I would say hi to him at the door. I always had this policy of greeting kids at the door, standing outside the classroom, greeting each fucking one as they came in, by name, how are you, like all of that, because I think that's important. And I was voted actually for 6 years friendliest teacher. And I remember they used to say, oh, because you're one of the only ones that knows our names. And like, I think it's important to not just teach them, but actually show interest in them, And there's this one kid, you're going to laugh. I say hi to him at the door, he just told me to fuck off. And I don't take it personally. And in the lessons, he was like, if you can imagine somebody challenging you in every single way, really trying to belittle you, just being really horrific and horrendous. And then
So you told the parents?
Yeah, I told the parents, and I remember, I said, but he's actually really good at music. It's a shame he behaves like that because he's really good at music. And they're like, oh, but what if we buy you a drum kit? We'll get you a drum kit. And he was like, no. Oh no, they said, we'll buy you a drum kit, but you've got to have lessons, which I think is a fair offering. I'm not going to buy a kid a drum kit just to fucking make noise on, because unless it's played well, it's torture for everyone else. And he's like, no, I just want the drum kit. I don't want the lessons. Anyway, that just gives you a little snapshot of what it was like, their family dynamic. The other sons were also apparently not the best behaved. But what's funny is he did soften over time. He did soften. And actually, after I left teaching altogether, he commented, I found years later, actually, Jim said, who's this guy who commented on your YouTube video with one of my interviews? I think it was an interview for Voice of America or Reuters. And he commented saying, oh, yes, miss. Like a really sweet message. There was more to it, I can't remember. And it's funny because it just goes to show that sometimes they really give you shit, but it's actually a form of attention seeking, but not attention seeking in like an obnoxious way, but in they want attention or support from you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, that was a case of that. And
it might not be any reflection on whether or not they like you.
No, and sometimes they do it to the ones that they like because you're the one that they want most support and attention from, So yeah, it's not always clear cut.
Oh my god, I don't know. I've just
but it was funny. Hi, how are you?
Seen you. I can't believe I've never seen you teaching a class, though. I know.
I often wonder.
I don't know what context that would ever have happened, and it's probably not ever legal in any way, but it just would have been so interesting to see you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, you could easily have done had you said you wanted to go into teaching, you wanted to come and shout at me for a day.
Well, thanks for telling me now.
But yeah, I mean, teaching in inner London comprehensive schools is more crowd control than anything else. And, I was never a fan of mainstream education. I just wanted them to make music and have fun and not have to teach them boring shit like music theory and grade them all the time, because I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to go off-piste.
Well, on that note.
Okay, tell me. Do we have a crime to solve today?
There is a crime, but it's already been solved.
Okay, so we don't have to do our Sharky and George act today.
No.
Sharky and George of the podcast world. Crime busters
of the podcast world.
Okay, tell me.
Which one? All right, so today I'm going to cover the House of
Gucci.
Hold on,
wait. Oh, no, wait, you ruined it. I didn't hear what he said. But we used to have two fish called Sharky and George.
Yeah, and we also had fish called Benson and Hedges.
I know. I was just going to say, did that actually happen? We did, didn't we? Benson and Hedges, and I think that shows how quickly we went from kids to
milking.
Anyway, okay, do the reveal. I didn't hear.
House of Gucci.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to kick back. Tell me the story.
All right. Okay. So, what do you know about the House of Gucci? Crime-wise.
I know nothing about it crime-wise. I know that Lady Gaga was in the film. I know that people say it was really bad. And I know nothing about the story. I know the accents apparently were atrocious, but I know nothing about the story.
Weird. Okay, so I chose this topic because I saw the film House of Gucci recently. Lady Gaga and Adam Driver were in it. So was Selma Hayek. I actually thought it was really good.
Okay, good.
It was really good, but I watched it because there is a murder involved. And even though this film was like 3 hours long, which flew by, to be honest, it's not like Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God. Do you know what? I remember seeing one of those in the cinema.
Oh,
it was
with me.
3.5 hour one.
You and me. I remember I think we went with my boyfriend at the time, Keith, and you and me kept on leaving.
One sec.
Just not be there watching the film. Because it just went
a fucking 3 hour film.
On and on and on. I can do it at home, where you have your own creature comforts and you can stop and you can pause it to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But like and it's so weird, isn't it? Because nowadays you binge Netflix series, you'll watch 6 hours or something. It feels fine. But if a film is 3 hours long, you're like, oh, you know? But yeah, the one thing I was disappointed in is that the murdery part was covered in like 10 minutes at the end.
I know, you said that before. Yeah.
And I expected it to play a bigger role. So the film is a lot about the family history and less so about the murdery part. Whereas this one, my notes are actually like 3 times as long. I had to read through and cut out the bits that were just a lot of the family history.
Yeah.
Because I know you don't give a shit about that. So I'm giving you as much as you need to know to do the murdery part. Okay.
Okay, good.
So yeah. Same with the family tree. I made a version of the family tree, but it's only got like a fraction of the people in it. Because I was like, I'm not mentioning all these. Yeah. I've made a family tree of the key players, I've called it, which I'll show you in a little bit. Okay.
Okay, cool.
So I thought I would do a deep dive into the House of Gucci with you and show you that not all is in fact Gucci. All right, so you haven't seen the film. I really recommend it. It's on Amazon Prime. You do have to pay for it.
Okay.
But it was actually, do you? I don't remember, but it was really good. I do really recommend it. There's an added level of creepy that you will, as my sister, appreciate, is that in that watching Lady Gaga, because she plays the character that she plays from a very young age to sort of older, it's really creepy watching her morph slowly into our aunt.
Oh, cut that out.
She's not listening. I mean, she's super stylish, but like she just literally morphs into our aunt.
Yeah.
Bit by bit. So I only knew that there was a murder, and I think I'd heard about it in relation to the Versace murder, which we might cover in another episode. But let me give you a little teaser. The subtitle of the book that I read, that was the main source of my research. Let me get you the book. The subtitle is House of Gucci, a true story of murder, madness, glamour, and greed. I really recommend this book. A large chunk of it, like I said, is the family history and the business history, which is actually more interesting than I thought. But like I said, I'm not going to go into very much about this. And unlike the film, I'm going to start with the murdery part. Okay?
Okay, cool.
All right.
That's what we're here for.
When was the Selena death? What year was it?
1995.
What month?
March 31st.
What's 31st? Oh my God, how weird is that? Because now I want to take you to 8:30 a.m. on Monday, 27th of March, 1995. Oh, so it's the same week.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
A week.
What a week in the world.
Me and you were like this.
We're like this. So we're on 20 Via Palestro in Milan. And Giuseppe Onorato, I'm going to apologize in advance. Obviously, there's a lot of Italian names in this. I'm going to do my best, but don't at me. Giuseppe Onorato, he was working as the building doorman. You know, like it's a office building. So there's a doorman at the door, and he's really vigilant. So he notices a man on the other side of the street watching his building. He was being super vigilant because 2 years earlier, a bomb went off up the street, killing 5 people and destroying the Modern Art Museum. There was also another bomb that went off at the same time, in the same evening in Rome, and was also linked to it. They were all tied to the Sicilian mafia. But the police had like gone up and down and interviewed all the doormen, and they were really seen as like the feet on the ground. You know, they had the word on the street. Just think, like, remember when we lived in that block of flats that we mentioned that we both lived in, and there was porters there. They knew everything. They knew all the street gossip, didn't they?
So they knew the word on the street.
Exactly.
They knew what you were doing before you knew what you're doing.
So Maurizio Gucci arrives and tells Giuseppe Onorato, buongiorno! Because he had an office on the first floor and he lived around the corner. Maurizio was the last Gucci to run Gucci before selling off his interests 2 years previous to this day. He lived around the corner in a stately palazzo, and he opened his offices in Via Palestro in the spring of 1994. Maurizio lived with his girlfriend and they seemed to be the perfect couple with the perfect life. The man across the street came in after Maurizio, pulled a gun and shot him 4 times. The gunman turned to Onorato, the doorman, who was petrified, literally shocked still, and shot at him twice and ran away. Luckily, Onorato was not fatally wounded and survived. He'd been shot twice in the arm. The police arrived soon after and pronounced Maurizio dead at the scene. Maurizio's lawyer, sorry, phone ringing. Maurizio's lawyer, Fabio Francini, arrived as well because they'd had an appointment to meet soon after. Maurizio's lawyer was apparently inconsolable and lay next to Maurizio's body for 4 hours while police worked around him.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is the 1995. DNA and stuff like that is not as advanced as it is now, but it feels like really bad policing to just let this guy stay there. So Corporal Giancarlo Togliatti of the homicide squad of the Carabinieri arrived. Cameramen and journalists arrived as well, because obviously Gucci is a big name. And so did Carlo Nocerino, Milan prosecutor, who seemed to be the only one who was concerned with contamination of evidence. He ordered the doors to be closed and the pavement to be cornered off. Originally, they couldn't decide if it was a mafia hit or a professional killer. They weren't even sure if it was a professional killer because there was too many shots fired. 2 eyewitnesses were left alive, including the doorman. The other eyewitness was a woman that the killer nearly knocked over as he was running away. And in order to solve the case, Togliatti spent the next 3 years delving into the Gucci family history. So I'm going to do a mini dive into the history because, like I said, my notes are probably 3 times as long when I
Did it take 3 years to solve who did it? Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. So the Gucci family were originally from Tuscany, Florence. And Florence has a rich history in the arts and the merchant guilds. Maurizio's uncle, Aldo Gucci, who will play a big role in the story, once joked, 9 out of 10 Florentines are merchants, and the 10th is a priest. And I'm going to start, though, with Maurizio's grandfather.
I'm sorry, hold on. Sorry, there's somebody at the door. Sorry. Oh, no, that's okay. He just left something and went. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
So let's start with Maurizio's grandfather, the very originally named Guccio Gucci.
Oh, what a good name.
Right?
I love that name.
Guccio's parents had a failing straw hat business, and he jumped ship to London and allegedly worked at the Savoy Hotel, although they have no record of him. So there's quite a lot of aggrandizing and embellishing of stories and histories. Like, for example, Aldo, who I just mentioned, tried to claim that Gucci used to make saddles for medieval courts, and that's their history in leatherwork. It's not true. So, but he did go to London, and he was in awe of all the rich people and the celebrities he saw at the hotel, in particular, their super fancy luggage and clothes.
Okay.
He eventually came back to Italy, and in 1921, he rented a shop space, and Gucci, the company, was born. He was located in a wealthy area, and he bought high-quality leather products to sell to rich tourists. He then eventually started producing his own leather goods. The workshop grew until he had 60 craftsmen. Aldo and Vasco, 2 of his sons, worked for the company, as did his daughter Grimelda. He had another son called Rodolfo.
These are all great names.
I know. Who was less keen and wanted to become an actor. Aldo started working in the business in 1925 at the age of 20, and he started from the bottom up. So they were hard workers. There's no denying that. Aldo was a big flirt and had numerous affairs throughout his lifetime. In 1935, Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, the League of Nations imposed an international trade embargo on Italy. So Gucci could no longer import leather goods, etc. So he had to start looking more locally for leather and so forth. And he also got by making shoes for the army. This is the time when he started using local veal leather, which was known to be super, super soft, and also introduced raffia and wicker and wood. And all of this was like very, very Gucci, you know, like you could, it's one of those designers that you can kind of spot a Gucci from far away. And part of that is also because of their customized prints. We all know. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you two things at this point, actually. Made a little family tree. So we've got Gucci and Aldo and Rodolfo. They have other siblings. I know.
That's a great name.
They've got other siblings, but I've left them out. There's loads more in the family tree, but I left them all out because I'm not mentioning them and I didn't want to confuse you.
Yeah.
So Aldo and Rodolfo are the main brothers working, and Rodolfo later on has a son called Maurizio, but we'll go into that later. And then we're familiar with the Gucci kind of logo, aren't we?
Yeah.
So kind of like with Louis Vuitton, you can spot a Gucci bag from quite far away.
Yeah.
They then started also making smaller items like belts and wallets and so forth that were more affordable. 1938, they opened another shop in Rome. And eventually Rodolfo does join the family business. He'd had a bit of a career in acting, but as the talkies came out, he kind of faded in the background and started working with the family business. And he ended up managing the Milan store. Post-war, the shops got even more popular, and they opened up another workshop to cater to the demand. It's really, I found this bit interesting. So you had all the different parts of the bags, for example, being made by the different teams, but each bag was composed of over 100 parts, and each bag was made up, assembled by a single person, and that person's ID number was placed on the bag. Oh. So each bag could take up to 10 hours, and that way, you know, that does add something a little special to it, but also if there was any faults, they could find specifically who did it. Aldo coined the motto, "Quality is remembered long after price is forgotten."
Good motto. I like that tagline.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? There's so many good quotes here. All of these people are despicable, okay? But their way with words, I don't know if it's an Italian thing, but they got some good quotes.
Yeah, that's almost David Ogilvy standard, that one.
Right, I like it. So for example, in the early 1950s, the brand is already, you know, high flying. Some of the visitors to the store in the early 50s, Princess Elizabeth, who obviously goes on to be Queen Elizabeth, Liz Taylor, Eleanor Roosevelt, Grace Kelly, Bette Davis, Katharine Hepburn, Sophia Loren. So like all of the big names were seen in Gucci, seen with Gucci, etc. It was thought of as like one of the first status labels coming out of Italy. Like now we associate Italy with fashion and designer brands, but that is in part because of Gucci and the role that it played in the fashion world. Americans were the best customers. So Aldo, who was very much the visionary of the company, opened a store in New York, and included under a US branch of the store. And from this point onwards, Aldo is very much seen as the one in charge of the American branches and the international branches, and Rodolfo as being in charge of the sort of Italy-based production and shops. 15 days after the New York shop opens, though, Gucci dies of a heart attack at age 72. So that's the end of Gucci. The legacy Gucci left, though, was playing his sons against each other to inspire competition.
Bad parenting.
Right? It's just, I know that...
Who does that? Why?
I know it was probably just very macho way of looking at the world or whatever, but it's so sad, you know? Like, you've got your family should be your team, right? And they're all working in the same business. So I get that you want your business to grow and be amazing, but we always say collaboration instead of competition, right?
Exactly. They missed that memo.
So he set the precedent for the downfall of the family business. Yeah. Between the three sons, because there was another one that I hardly ever mentioned, but Vasco ran the factory in Florence, Rodolfo managed the Milan store, and Aldo traveled around looking for new shop locations, etc., etc. In 1961, they opened a bunch of new stores, including Old Bond Street in London. 1973, they opened the Paris branch. 1972, they opened a second Paris branch. So it's growing exponentially. Aldo had a son. He had a few sons, but one son, Paolo, was the kind of black sheep of the family and caused a lot of problems. But he was super creative. He was very creative, but he wanted to produce a bunch of stuff and designs that Gucci didn't want to have under his name. But then he was kind of had his hand tied in terms of producing stuff outside of the company. So just bear that in mind. 1968, Rodeo Drive shop opens and a new Florence store is opened. And then they start really mass producing their shoes, you know, the Gucci loafers. I find hideous.
Oh, yeah.
You know, loafers with a little gold bit on the front with the red and the green stripe. And then they also produced a woman's version. By 1969, they were selling 84,000 shoes per year in the US, 24,000 of them just from the New York shop. So big business. And in 1969, they also started producing full clothing lines. So Rodolfo, back to Rodolfo and his family. He had his son, Maurizio, played by Adam Driver, who is, I think, my weird crush.
Like, who's Adam Driver? I don't think I've ever...
He was in Star Wars, and I feel like you came to see, you know, one of the newer Star Wars.
Nope.
Google him. I'll Google him for you. You'll know him. He's just like very odd looking.
Oh my God. You do have weird taste. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay. I don't actually know this guy.
So he was in Girls, which is an amazing show. Am I sharing my screen? No, I'm not.
No, but I'm looking. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
He was in the newer Star Wars movies, and he's in this, I can't remember what other things. I've seen him in a few things, but yeah, he's just a phenomenal actor, and I think that adds to the weird crushness. Sorry, Paul. Forgot you listened to this now. Yeah, so he plays Maurizio in the film. Maurizio's mum died when he was 5, and his dad was very distant and yet very controlling and possessive. So lovely combination in parenting, right? Maurizio met Patrizia Reggiani. No, Patrizia Reggiani, who is Lady Gaga, in 1970. And wanted to marry her despite his dad being unhappy about it. So Patrizia actually came from a fairly wealthy family, but like a sort of humble background. But her family were in transport and they were doing really well. But his dad was obviously, they had very grand ideas about their station in life. And therefore he wanted Maurizio, I suppose, to marry someone of a really, really fancy la-di-da name. And so he was convinced that Patrizia was a gold digger and blah, blah, blah. Maurizio was very shy, but a very, very eligible bachelor. So Rodolfo thought that Patrizia was beneath him. They'd met at a party and Maurizio was instantly in love. Patrizia did have ambition. She wanted someone to build an empire with. And this was at a time where it was severely frowned upon for a woman to have such goals and ambitions, which, I mean, it still is. But when a guy has that attitude, it's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
Totally fine. Maurizio at the time was studying law at university. And he asked Patrizia to marry him on their second date.
Wow. That's moving fast.
Yeah. Patrizia's style was always over the top, overdone, artificial. She was kind of known for it and glamorized it. She went to school for translating after she finished high school, and she used to go out almost every night and go straight to class at 8 a.m. still in her cocktail dress from the night before.
I like her.
No, you won't by the end, but it's one of those weird things where, like, I don't like her.
Oh.
But something just so relatable. And just, no, not relatable, because she lives a lifestyle that I never have and never will. I don't know, I just think maybe because she's funny with it.
Yeah, I know, so far I like this character, but yeah, you're going to ruin that.
So Patricia's dad took him in because his Maurizio's dad basically disowned him. So kind of like you were saying about Selena. You remember? Her dad wasn't keen on her spouse, and you know, that formed a rupture. Eventually Maurizio and his dad did kind of patch things up again, I think, when he realized he's married her now.
Yeah,
you know, what can you do? And he saw that, like, actually Maurizio was very happy, and Patrizia was very driven and pushed him.
Yeah.
So Patricia's dad took Maurizio in, gave him a job on the condition that he finished his studies, and delayed the marriage a bit. So, you know, sensible. Rodolfo even went to the Cardinal of Milan to try to stop the wedding, but the Cardinal said, no, there's no reason to stop this just because you don't want it to happen. So they eventually got married, and there was 500 guests at the wedding, but not one Gucci apart from Maurizio himself. Maurizio had won the respect of Aldo during this time, who didn't think that any of his sons had the nous to run Gucci. Patrizia sought Aldo as an ally as well, and Aldo helped broker a meeting between Maurizio and Rodolfo 2 years after they fell out, and Rodolfo just acted like nothing happened and invited Maurizio to move to New York and work at the Gucci store there. So that resonates. We have a lot of family dynamics where you just kind of pretend nothing happened and don't ever really properly address it or apologize and just move on.
Easiest way.
Yeah. So they moved to New York. Patrizia and Maurizio moved to New York for a bit to work Gucci there. I think they were there 7 years. When they first moved out there, Maurizio was really unhappy with the cheap hotels, so he ended up, and so was Patrizia. So they moved into the St. Regis Hotel, and then to more and more glam abodes, ending up at the Olympic Tower overlooking Fifth Avenue. So not short of a pound or two. They were the first Brangelina of their time, because she was chauffeur driven around in a car with a license plate that said, I don't know how to say this, Maurizia.
Oh, so, like... that's funny.
Oh my God, Patricia quote. I've littered this with Patricia quotes because they're amazing. A quote about her, I should say. She would rather weep in a Rolls Royce than be happy on a bicycle.
She's funny.
She is funny. I mean, again, not what I aspire to or anything like that, but she's funny with it.
Yeah.
In 1976, their first daughter, Alessandra, was born, and then in 1981, Allegra, their second daughter, was also born. 1972, they opened their first store in Asia, in Tokyo, and in 1974, in Hong Kong, the Asians were loving the Gucci-ness. If you watch Bling Empire, you will see that they still love the Gooch. As Aldo hired more and more staff that were offspring of Italian noble friends and so forth, moving them to New York for long hours and low pay, the service in the shops got worse and worse. But it was almost cool to be mistreated in a Gucci store.
What? Oh my God, how does that become a thing? Is that the equivalent of like when Starbucks spells your name wrong?
I guess.
People like it.
Before social media. So one journalist said, Gucci's rudeness is undoubtedly a reflection of what Dr. Gucci, which was what Aldo liked to be called, considers to be pride, but which the rest of the world recognizes as arrogance. Aldo loved this article so much that he sent the journalist flowers.
Wow. Imagine that's part of their branding, huh?
Crazy, isn't it? 1972, they started perfumes and watches, so constantly expanding. Yeah, constantly growing. In 1981-ish, Rodolfo.
Do you know what? Sorry to interrupt, but I would quite like to go and experience the rudeness just to see what it would be like.
I don't know if it's still the case or whether
do they insult you, or they're just a little hostile.
I think they're just really off, made fun of people's clothes, would tell you if something didn't suit you.
A bit like Simon Cowell.
Yeah, Simon Cowell of the fashion world. Yeah. But I mean, this is 70s, 80s Gucci. I don't think it's like that anymore because it's not even owned by the Gucci family anymore. And I don't know whether this kind of stuff would fly anymore. So around about 1981-ish, Rodolfo got prostate cancer at a time of all-out war between Gucci and between all of the family members, in particular Gucci and Paolo. Do you remember the creative son of Aldo? Over the years, Paolo had accumulated evidence that Gucci was siphoning off money to avoid taxes. So he's collecting this evidence and he releases it.
On his own family?
Dad and family members. Yeah.
What a shyster.
In the meantime, I've got to read you this quote from this book. All right. So if you want to see what Patrizia thinks of her husband, right? He was very clever, but when they first met, he wasn't very social. He didn't have that kind of charm, you know? He developed it over time, but she was very much seen as a driving force. So this is a quote from Patrizia's mouth. I knew he was weak, but I was not weak. I pushed him so hard he became president of Gucci. I was social. He didn't like to socialize. I was always out. He was always in the house. I was the representative of Maurizio Gucci, and that was enough. He was like a child, a thing called Gucci that had to be washed and dressed.
I mean, I kind of like how he lives.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds like the dream life, but so she was very much part of the Gucci brands, you know, the face, the public face of Gucci. She's like the epitome of fake it till you make it, or dress for the job that you want rather than the one you have.
Yeah.
1983, Rodolfo dies. He left Maurizio 50% of the Gucci empire and a bunch of properties around the world, including a massive estate in St. Moritz, and millions in the bank. Maurizio was not known to be good with money or decision making, but he had gone from being a shy boy to a flashy git.
Whose words are those?
Mine.
Oh.
Yeah,
that was a quote.
Patrizia. Maurizio produced paperwork to show that his dad had actually transferred the shares before he died, saving Maurizio $8.3 million in inheritance tax. But the rest of the family suspected that this was forged, and it does come up later. So remember this. Maurizio made loads of changes to staff, in particular trying to protect the company in case Aldo got in trouble because he was having these tax issues. Because Paolo at this point had revealed and reported his own dad of hiding money in offshore accounts, etc., to not have to pay as much taxes. Maurizio tried to form an alliance with Paolo to help take over the company and protect it if Aldo went to jail. Patrizia and Maurizio, their relationship at this time was becoming more and more strained, and he felt like she was taking over the role of his father in terms of telling him what to do, how to run the business, etc., etc. But she was very much the strong woman behind the weak man. But he started distancing himself from her. And in 1985, so only a couple of years after their second daughter was born, Maurizio packed a suitcase and went to Florence, supposedly for a few days. The next day, Patrizia got a call from a friend to tell her that Maurizio wasn't coming back. Like, what a fucking coward. Right?
Where'd he go?
Packed the suitcase and left, claiming it was for a few days, and then got someone else to call his wife to tell the wife that he had left.
Jesus.
He claimed he wanted his freedom and that he felt castrated, in quotation marks, by her. Patrizia sought solace in her friend and a tarot reader, Pina Oriema, which in the film is played by Salma Hayek, and she does an amazing job as well. Pina was a friend for a while and even managed one of the Gucci franchises in Naples for a while. Patrizia and Maurizio kept their separation secret from the public for a couple of years, actually. And then in 1985, same year that he left her, a Milan court sequestered Maurizio's 50% share of the Gucci company, of the Italian branch, while they investigated the possibility of this forged signatures, so to avoid inheritance.
Yeah, okay.
The sequester didn't last very long, but when Maurizio realized that Aldo was the source of it, he started freezing him out of the company. So all of this was very Dynasty Dallas drama in the 80s, and the press was all over it all of the time on both sides of the Atlantic, and all of this just led to more and more sales.
Oh, wow.
People love the drama.
Wow.
In Christmas 1985 saw the true end of the marriage between Maurizio and Patrizia, as their arguing turned physical and in front of the daughters. During this rest of the story in particular, you are just going to feel so sorry for these two daughters.
Oh,
because
God.
I mean, it's bad enough when your parents get divorced, having to grow up in the public eye with parents like this, but for them to then start hating each other, arguing, and for it to turn physical and in front of you.
Yeah.
So from this point onward, the battle for the kids turns nasty as well.
How old were the kids?
Like 9 and 5 or something.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Young. Aldo pleaded guilty of basically not paying about of embezzling about 11 million out of the company, and also therefore not paying taxes on that money. And he had to pay $7 million in taxes back. He faced up to 15 years in prison. What he got was a year and a day. They claim it's because of his age, but I think it's because of privilege.
How old was he at the time?
I think in his 60s.
Okay.
But he went to a federal detention center in Florida called Eglin, which is nicknamed the Country Club Clink because of the facilities available to the prisoners. They had sports fields, they had a pool, ping pong tables, a volleyball court on the beach, bridge club, telephones in the rooms, etc., etc. He is quoted in saying that he found it incredibly restful, both mentally and physically. Not really the purpose of prison, but anyways. When Maurizio realized that the financial police were after him, he escaped to Switzerland on his motorcycle because there's no financial extradition from Switzerland. So he went to his St. Moritz estate in June 1987, and he stayed in Switzerland for about a year in kind of self-imposed exile to avoid going to court. The crime that they were looking into is very random. It was the illegal export of capital in the shape of his boat, the Creole.
Okay, so this wasn't to do with inheritance tax.
No, that had kind of resolved itself a little bit.
Okay.
But now they were after him because of this boat that he took out of Milan, and you were supposed to like either register or pay or something if you took large sums of money out of the country, or goods worth large sums of money, which the boat counted as. So again, the press fucking love every part of this. From Switzerland, Maurizio watched as the Milan court confiscated his 50% share of Gucci. And what Maurizio started doing was looking for a third party that would come in and buy the shares off Aldo and his sons, which totaled 50%, so that Maurizio would be a 50% shareholder with another company or individual, that he would be the only Gucci running the show. So he found an investor, Investcorp, who were Iraqi Middle East, from Iraq, and they had just saved Tiffany's from going under.
Oh, wow.
So they had some experience in the finance, in finance, they were in a financial institution, but in the fashion world, working in the States, and they wanted a way in to the European market, and they thought Gucci might be the way. So Maurizio meets Investcorp in London and told them his mantra, which appears several times in the book, that Gucci is like a Ferrari, but it is being driven like a Cinquecento.
What does that even mean? I remember the Cinquecento. I remember the adverts in the 90s, but like...
it's a sports car just not being driven to its full potential, basically.
Okay.
Maurizio didn't give Investcorp any kind of financial reports or guarantees or anything, just gave them the full Gucci history and gossip. But the main guy in Investcorp just seemed to really, really like Maurizio and the company, and so agreed to pursue buying the 50% off the other family members, who weren't to know that Maurizio was in on this plan, because they probably wouldn't have agreed if they knew that Investcorp was like a Maurizio ally.
Yeah.
In 1988, a Milan court ruled that Maurizio had forged those certificates and owed $24 million. Maurizio came back to Milan to defend himself on the condition that there would be no jail time. And him and his lawyers managed to negotiate a smaller fine he had to pay in order to get control of his 50% of the Gucci branch, the Gucci Italian branch.
Mm-hmm.
By 1989, Investcorp had bought out the other Guccis, and in 1990, Aldo died. So now Maurizio owns 50%, Investcorp owns 50%. But Maurizio's advisors are telling him, just sell your shares to Investcorp. Just give it up. You have increasing amounts of debt. His lifestyle was getting more and more flashy. He had to pay Patrizia alimony and childcare, which was, a huge chunk of money to keep them in the lifestyle that they were used to. So eventually Investcorp actually buy out Maurizio as well. And Investcorp now own Gucci. Actually, I don't know if they still do, but in early 90s, they bought out all the Guccis, basically, all the Guccis. And it's now got absolutely nothing to do with the original Gucci family. Maurizio at this point is still paying $100,000 on average a month to Patrizia for childcare and so forth. Patrizia was still wildly furious about this divorce, fuming about new girlfriends that he would get and so forth, and threatened to burn down the St. Moritz estate at one point. So she was just fiery and angry. Maurizio's spending increased and money to Patrizia was decreasing. So she started not being able to afford her lifestyle. Maurizio even borrowed money from his staff members. So there's a story in the book about him borrowing money from his loyal driver of decades, that his driver basically borrowed, in quotation marks, from his nephew's piggy bank. Patrizia made it very widely known that she wanted to ruin Maurizio and see him crawl back to her. Whether she would take him back is another thing. But, she felt like her status, her reputation, her lifestyle had been taken away. And I think that bothered her maybe more than the fact that the love was gone, right? Maurizio even knew that she was appealing to one of the maids to help her find a hitman to bump him off. Don't know how seriously he took it. But in 1992, Patrizia was diagnosed with a brain tumor and needed to have surgery as soon as possible. I think Maurizio attributed some of her aggressive behavior to this tumor. Chances of survival for this brain tumor operation was actually considered very low. Patrizia's mother asked Maurizio to look after the two daughters while she was convalescing after the operation, and Maurizio said, "Oh, I'm kind of too busy and there's not enough space in the flat."
Oh my God.
This infuriated Patrizia, and I totally get that, because fine, your relationship falls apart, but you've got kids together and that's your kid's mother. you know, those kids must have been so scared and so nervous. And you would have thought that for the kids' sake, you want to give the mother the biggest, best chance of recovery. I don't know. It's heartbreaking. And even after the operation, Patrizia was actually only given a few months to live because they thought that the brain tumor was malignant and they couldn't remove all of it. So she started to fight the terms of the divorce, saying that the tumor made her too ill to know what she was signing. And she wanted to secure the best deal possible for her and her kids. They negotiated a massive increase and even a flat in Monte Carlo for Patricia's mum. And the mum even got 1 million Swiss francs. So she was given a huge pay rise in terms of being the divorcee. The tumor was actually then found to be benign. So she was given the clear bill of health-ish. At this point, Patrizia starts sending not hate letters, but hate cassettes to Maurizio.
Recording herself
on a cassette and posting them to Maurizio.
She's funny.
and they, I mean,
it's like an angry equivalent of an angry voice note.
Yeah.
A rage text.
I mean, saying things like, I want to tell you that you are a monster, blah, blah, blah. Like there was major anger, you know. I don't know whether Maurizio towards Patrizia, but she was definitely much more vocal about it. She even went to the press, you know, sounding off about him. Maurizio was advised to get a bodyguard, but he kind of laughed it off. I suppose it as much as you might hate your ex, it's next level thinking you might be actually in physical danger from them once you've broken up and separated and not living together. Patrizia was just fuming, especially when he sold his 50% to Investcorp, because she saw that as the legacy for her kids, and Gucci represented power and status, and she wanted it. She wanted it for herself and for her daughters, you know, and their family. Maurizio at this point had cleared all legal battles and even had $100 million in the bank, and he was for the first time quite free, because he had a lot of pressure when he was running Gucci, when his dad was alive, when he was with Patrizia. He had a lot of people telling him what to do and what to expect and so forth. And he's free now, you know? So he founded his own company and rented the spaces in Via Palestro, where his offices were. When Maurizio didn't turn up for Alessandra's 18th birthday, Patrizia even asked her divorce lawyer at the party what would happen to her if she had him bumped off. So it is really sad because they had a massive party for her, you know, like a big showy affair, and he didn't even turn up. And it kind of feels like it's the kind of big do that he could have stayed on the other side of the room from Patrizia and not interacted with her very much. So I do feel for the poor, like I said, the kids are the ones that you feel incredibly sad for. November 1994, their divorce is finalized. Patrizia was left lost and angry, and she called her friend Pina to her side. Remember, the psychic tarot reader, who had actually just stolen $30,000 from her nephew's business where she was working. So she was really glad for an excuse to get away from Naples. So not the most moral of people. When Maurizio was killed, he was actually dating a lady called Paola. They had been living together for a while, and they'd been together for several years. And as soon as she found out that Maurizio had been killed, she told the police that Patrizia had been going around telling loads of people she wanted him dead. She sadly had absolutely no legal protection. The flat wasn't in her name where they lived. It's like really super grand flat. So she just had to move out because Patrizia turns up the next day at the flat, because the flat now technically belongs to the daughters, and kicks Paola out. She totally refurnishes the entire flat so that there's not a single bit left of Paola. Like, I feel really bad for her because that was her partner, you know, and she's just totally left out of it. Patrizia organizes the funeral, which Paola doesn't go to. I couldn't understand if Paola wasn't invited, but I imagine not. At the funeral, Patrizia says to journalists, On a human level, I'm sorry. On a personal level, I can't say the same thing.
Wow.
There's so many things from this point on, that so many quotes in the press and everything, that I just think those daughters must be so heartbroken to read this.
Yeah, I'm finding her less endearing now.
Yeah. Within a few months, Patrizia had removed all of the traces of Paola from the flat, redecorated. She even hung a larger-than-life portrait of herself in the living room or somewhere in the flat. She told a friend, "He may have died, but I had just begun to live." Several years, so about 2.5 years after Maurizio was shot, 2 police cars pull up to Patrizia's home, the flat where Maurizio used to live. In those 2 years since the murder, there had been no suspects. But at this point, 31st of January, 1997, Patrizia is placed under arrest. 4 others are arrested as well. Pina the psychic, Ivano Savioni, a Milan hotel porter, Benedetto Cerullo, a mechanic, and Grazio Cicala, who was already in jail for an unrelated drug crime. Just 2 months previously, the cold case was just that, ice cold. But then the police got an anonymous phone call from someone asking to meet up at a local gelateria. I don't know why that made me laugh, but just in case you needed a reminder that we are in Italy. So the police meet up with this guy. The police officer meets up with this guy who introduces himself as Gabriele Carpanesi. They went back to the police officer Nini's office, and Carpanesi tells him that he lived in a cheap hotel when he moved back to Italy from he lived in New York and Guatemala and all kinds of places. So he moved back to Italy, moved into this cheap hotel where Savioni is the owner's nephew and was the hotel porter. Savioni was one of those wheeler dealer types and also a pimp for the hotel guests. So he used to source prostitutes for them and stuff. So real nice guy. Yeah. Carpanesi was running low on funds. So he convinced Savioni that when he was in Latin America and Guatemala, he was actually a big-time drug lord and would pay the hotel bill in a few months' time, that he was just having a few money, like cash flow issues. So Savioni is like in awe, starstruck, and fangirling over Carpanesi, who he now thinks is this big-time drug lord.
These are great names.
Right? So over a drink, Savioni tells Carpanesi that he himself had been involved in some dodgy shit and that he was that he had lined up the killers for the Gucci murder. Because Carpanesi didn't believe him, Savioni went into all these details that only people involved in the plot could know. And Carpanesi, in his defense, went straight to the police with this. So here we have another story of another crime solved because some stupid guy could not brag. Like, just keep your mouth shut. Just keep your mouth shut. Do you remember the Colin Pitchfork episode?
Yes.
Where the guy got caught because someone was like, not bragging, but talking about it in a pub. Yeah. Otherwise, we would have no idea, you know? So the story goes as such. Patrizia paid about $375,000 through her friend Pina to find someone to kill Maurizio. Pina and Ivano Savioni were old friends. Savioni got Orazio Cicala on board because he knew he had gambling debts. Cicala found the killer, Benedetto Cerullo, and the getaway car was his own son's green Renault Clio, which sounds like get another car.
You should do that, yeah.
Unless you hated your son, I don't know. But even then, it's like it easily tied back to you. Well, apparently not, because that's not the reason they found the killers. So, after the murder, they wanted to blackmail Patrizia for more money because they saw her living in luxury and they didn't feel like they had got enough money from her. And it's like, a deal's a deal, guys.
I know, you can't go back. You know, not that these people are particularly decent, honest people, but you know. A deal is a deal.
So Carpanesi agreed to go back to the hotel with a wire to try to get Savioni to confess again. He went there with one of the police officers who spoke fluent Spanish and went under the name of Carlos and pretended to be one of Carpanesi's drug dealer friends from Latin America. And Carpanesi said that Carlos, in quotation marks, would be an ideal person to persuade Patrizia to give them more money. Savioni was like awestruck by the second, Latin American drug dealer. So he even gave Carpanesi his car to take Carlo out to dinner. So what did they do? They also bugged the car. And so as a result of that, they had a fuck ton of recordings. Pina and Savioni were picked up on the bugs in the car, talking about the investigation being extended and how anxious Pina was. Still not proving their guilt, but they also picked up discussions about Carlo getting more money out of Patrizia for them. They eventually divulged enough information to incriminate everyone except for Patrizia, who they called La Signora. But they must have built up some case against her, and the trial started in May 1998. The nicknames of the key players: Patrizia was known as the Black Widow, and Pina, the psychic, was known as the Black Witch.
According to who?
I guess the press.
Oh, okay.
2 months before the start of the trial, Pina actually broke down. This is where they got the case against Patrizia. She broke down and confessed after Patrizia offered to shower her cell in gold if she took all the blame. So I think she realized Patrizia would do anything to not get any of this blame, not spend any time in jail. Listen to this. The trial was thought of as the Italian OJ equivalent.
Oh!
Which is exactly what you said about Selena.
Yeah.
It highlighted the difference, like with OJ, how it highlighted sort of class wars and so forth. This highlighted the difference between your average Italian and the elite. Patrizia claimed the money she gave to Pina was actually just a generous loan. And in court, Patrizia calls her first decade married to Maurizio as absolute bliss. But then, this is another great quote, he became like a seat cushion that takes the shape of the last person to sit on it.
What does it even mean? It's funny, though.
Yeah. So I'm not condoning her actions, but she does have a way in words with which I aspire to her way in with words, for sure. Patrizia claims Pina wanted to do something nice for her friend, so killed Maurizio without being asked to. And when Patrizia was asked why she didn't report her friend for murdering her ex-husband, she said that she was scared of the scandal.
Whatever. Don't buy that story for a second.
Yeah. Patrizia and the 4 others were found guilty. Patrizia got 29 years, Orazio Cicala, 29 years, Ivano Savioni, 26 years, and Pina Oriema, 25 years. Benedetto Cerullo, who was the actual gunman, got life. Most of the Guccis now, if you want to know where they are, they live a private life. Silvana, the mother of Patrizia, looked after the 2 daughters who had lost their mom as well as their dad, and they lost their dad at the hands of their mom. Patrizia got weekly visits from the daughters, though. So even though they constantly professed their love to their dad, who they admitted was distant, but was so loving and caring and giving, they still supported their mom and had a relationship with their mom. I don't know how.
I guess it's just that's their surviving parent.
That's their mom.
If they weren't in touch with her, they would have none.
Yeah. Eventually, Patrizia was allowed unsupervised excursions as long as she had a friend as a guarantor. In 2011, she refused parole because it would mean having to get a job.
Oh my God. So she'd rather be in jail than work.
Which says something about the prison that her lifestyle in prison, right? In 2016, she was finally released after serving 18 years of her 29-year sentence. It was reduced for good behavior. It's like, that bothers me. Good behavior in prison should mean that you don't get more added to your sentence, right? Not that you get freed fucking,
yeah,
you know, nearly 11 years earlier than you originally were committed to. I mean, why do they even bother with sentences? They should just say until we whatever. All of the others, except for the actual killer, were also released around the same time. He's still in maximum security, and as far as I know, he's still in jail because he got life. Soon after the release, a journalist asked Patrizia why she didn't shoot Maurizio herself, and she said, "My eyesight is not so good. I didn't want to miss."
Oh my God.
Like, the poor daughter.
She's got some serious audacity, huh?
Right? That's the word for it. So at this point, there's no point even denying that she was responsible. She's already served the jail time, right?
Like, does she say any of this with a sense of humor, or is she really just that brazen?
I mean, I find it funny seeing these clips, and I saw a few clips of her speaking or whatever. I don't know if she means it with humor. I think that line was kind of meant as a joke.
Okay.
But some of the things I found funny, I don't think were meant to be funny. They're just so pompous and arrogant that you can't help but laugh.
Yeah.
Especially because they're said she's like a caricature. Do you know what I mean? That's it.
Yeah,
she's
exactly. Yeah.
Herself. She's like a combination of like Bubbles from Little Britain, you know, the one that's in the spa and constantly running away from her bill, and a few other characters like that. Eventually, I don't know how this didn't happen right away, but eventually her relationship with her daughters broke down. In 2018, they asked to cancel a lifetime financial support that Maurizio agreed to pay Patrizia during the divorce settlement. So she was supposed to get 1 million Swiss francs a year, and they wanted to no longer pay it because, like, I don't really know how it was still in place, because you're not supposed to benefit from crimes you commit, right? And she was sentenced and served time for killing Maurizio. So I don't really understand. But the courts ordered that they still had to pay her this 1 million Swiss francs, and they even had to back pay the amount for the years that she was in prison for killing the dad.
Wow.
She did try to make some amends, and in 2019, she actually compensated Giuseppe Onorato, the doorman from the beginning, remember?
Mm-hmm. The one who got shot twice, right?
He'd been shot in the arm, so she did give him some financial compensation. But yeah, that's the story of Gucci.
I mean, Patricia makes that story with all the quotes about her and her. I can't wait to watch the film now, because
I mean, you should. Like, Lady Gaga, the accents are weird, but they were quite good. I don't know. I thought they were good.
How did they condense the whole murder in like 10 minutes?
Because the whole rest of the film was more about the history of the company and the growth of the company and Maurizio's role in the company, which obviously I didn't focus on very much at all. I skipped through some major things company related, and a lot of like playing the brothers off each other, and you know, Rodolfo had 50% and Aldo had like given some percentages, small percentages, to his sons. So together, Aldo and his 3 sons made up the other 50%. But if any one of those sons teamed up with Rodolfo on a decision, then they had the majority vote. So there was a lot of this back and forth and blah, blah, blah. And then like they would have 50% of the Italian branch, but only 20% of the US watch branch.
Boring.
Whatever.
I'm glad you cut out all those details.
And actually the book outlines it because that kind of shit bores me too, financial blah 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 stuff, but the book explains it really clearly, and the film also goes into it in a way that's not too like complex and blah blah blah. The other thing I didn't realize and I didn't mention, but Tom Ford didn't start his career, but he was a designer, one of the main designers at Gucci for a while.
Oh, didn't know that. But then I don't know much about Tom Ford other than his perfumes are really expensive.
Yeah. That's all I know also. But yeah, because at one point they decided to start taking on external designers as well to stay relevant and so forth. And so Tom Ford was one of those. But yeah, so I recommend the book. I definitely recommend the film. Yeah, to be honest, I would rewatch the film. I want to rewatch the film now that I've read the book. Because obviously,
I can't wait to watch the film actually now that I feel like I know the characters.
You know, the film played a bit of poetic license with the timelines and this, that, and the other, but the overall theme stays very true to it. But like I said, the murder just happens very quickly at the end of the film. The whole entire time I was mean, like,
why do they not make that the main feature of the story?
Yeah, they really didn't. I mean, there was a lot about the breakdown of their relationship. But yeah, like the trial, which I imagine had some fucking classic moments.
Can't believe it took 3 years to work out that it was Patrizia who did it.
I think they suspected, but they just had no evidence. And what are they going to do?
She's going all around town telling people.
Well, we've all been guilty of this, right? She only went round before he was murdered talking about how she would like to bump him off.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not evidence. We're all been guilty of bad-mouthing exes.
But not everyone goes around saying they're going to kill him.
No. Yeah, but no, we've also said that in anger. I'm going to kill him. I don't think I ever actually say that in anger, but, you know, people do.
Yeah.
And also, this was like high profile. So I guess the police needed to make sure that they had their case down, because otherwise they would just buy their way out of it, right?
Well, do you know what? I guess it's not always the husband, huh?
No. Sometimes it's the wife. Yeah.
But more often than not, it's someone you know.
Yes. And I just want to give a little shout out. They're not listening, but a little bit of a moment of respect for Alessandra and Allegra, the daughters, because they are the true victims in this whole story.
Yeah.
They really are.
How old are they now?
They are a few years older than us. I think Alessandra was born in 76 and Allegra in 81. So
yeah, that's awful. One of your parents gets killed and the other goes to prison for killing him.
Yeah.
Or for having them killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and their life was not a bed of roses before then either. Do you know what I mean? And with the nasty divorce, with the family feuding, with everything being in the press, with their parents not having, like, I really respect the celebrities that keep their kids out of the public eye. Yeah. Because
I hope that they manage to have some sort of really reclusive, peaceful life after all this.
Yeah. I actually didn't go into much detail of what they'd been doing since, but I hope that they are happy. I know they're married and they have their own kids, so hopefully they've managed to find some peace and some happiness, because those poor girls.
Yeah.
I read in the book as well that when the police came to arrest Patrizia, Alessandra, the oldest one, who was like an older teen at that point, even pulled her mum aside and said, "Mum, just tell me now. I won't tell the police, but did you do it?"
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine having to
have to ask that? Yeah.
Can you imagine ever asking your mum that?
And also, you know what? Credit to her for handling that so rationally, you know?
Maturely,
Can't imagine even being in the headspace to be able to have a rational conversation like that in that situation.
I know. So yeah, that's the Gucci story. I know it is one that I had mentioned I was interested in doing, although I did not confirm I was doing it. And it's another one that I don't know if maybe because you didn't know much about it, you were that bothered about. But hopefully I convinced you that that is a very interesting case.
You make every story a good one, that's for sure. But Patrizia, she's a wordsmith, that one.
She is an evil wordsmith. Maybe, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put together some of her quotes for socials.
Yeah. I like
because there's a whole bunch about fashion and all sorts. I think my favorite one is about I would rather cry in a Rolls Royce than be happy on a bicycle.
I quite like the one where she describes her ex-husband as a cushion that someone sat on. I don't even really understand it, but I
think because she just saw him as weak and easily influenced. I think that's what, but it does bring up the image of someone's bum print on her husband, doesn't it? Like he's that weak.
You could just tell it's such an insulting, degrading insult.
And that's the kind of thing she was just going to the press about.
Oh gosh, she should publish her book of insults. I would buy it. Better than Shakespearean ones.
I know. And she was very happy. She had a very good relationship with the press in that she went to them often, and they must have loved her because she was comedy gold, as well as being
those sound bites.
Yeah. And when you see pictures of her, do you want to see? I haven't even shown you pictures.
I want to see a picture of her. Yeah.
So this is her, right? You can see Maurizio fell in love with her because she reminded him of Elizabeth Taylor, and I could totally see that, right?
Yeah.
Look. But then this is Lady Gaga and Adam Driver How well does she embody her?
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah, that's good.
That's creepy, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is her mugshot.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is her later on in life. Clearly a fan of the surgeries. I mean, you could see she was very glam, very over the top.
Yeah, I definitely see the Elizabeth Taylor.
So there's a lot of comparison photos, obviously, of her and Lady Gaga, but I thought Lady Gaga nailed it. But
yeah, I do like Lady Gaga.
Oh, she's phenomenal. I want to watch A Star is Born, but apparently it's really super sad.
That's why I didn't watch it.
Yeah, and I'm just I don't know what it is that I can watch like murder stuff, but I can't watch.
I know. Yeah.
I will never watch The Notebook.
Oh, I don't know anything about it. Just that it's not. I can't imagine that I'm going to enjoy it or you would. Isn't it a love story or something?
Yeah, but a tragic one. I think
really?
The girl gets like dementia, and so she.
Oh my God! Who watches this stuff?
I don't know. So this is their wedding day.
I mean, okay, people probably say that about the stuff we watch, but like, yeah, I don't know why anyone would put on something to be sad about, you know? Who got time for that?
Well, I know, but we do the same with, look at this. This is her through the ages, I suppose. But she definitely, here, this must be funeral. Look at the two daughters, bless them. So yeah, there you go. There you have it. Well,
that was a good one. I'm thinking what I'm going to do next. I've researched my episodes, but I just don't know what's an appropriate one to follow this.
Well, I have not researched any further episodes, so I have to decide today what my next episode will be. All right. Well,
hold on. Do we want something that involves a death?
What, from your next one? Or
just a crime? Yeah.
I'll leave it up to you.
I'm trying to save my best for last.
Is your best a crimey one? A murdery one?
I mean, quite a few are. There's very few where,
there's no there isn't.
Yeah.
I'll leave it up to you. See how you feel next week.
Okay.
All right.
I have one that's more lighthearted, should we say.
Well,
there's only grievous bodily harm. No murder.
Well, I feel like this one was fairly lighthearted, even though there was a death, because there was a lot of fashiony stuff. So maybe go for something a bit more morbid, and then we save the lighthearted one for, the next time I do a Levi Belfield or something.
As a palate cleanser.
All right. Well, I love you.
Thank you.
And I love our listeners.
That's true. I feel the same.
Yeah.
Love you all.
Yes.
And
you are all Switchblade sisters to us.
And we really do appreciate your listens. And we would love for you to say hi.
Yeah. And also to follow, review, etc. on Apple Podcasts.
All that. Yeah,
and Spotify.
Do all that.
The usual blah, blah. No, but I have to say, it actually genuinely does help.
Oh, completely.
Getting us to be suggested to more people. And we would love to have more Switchblade sisters in our social club.
We would love it.
All right.
Bye. Hey there. Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Do you need a new website or want to boost your social media performance? Or do you hate podcast editing? You've tried optimizing your website and social media channels, but you're still not getting the listeners, downloads, and engagement you want?
We, the Safier sisters, love helping people with tasks that they hate. We know a thing or two about podcasts, websites, and social media, and we love working with other podcasters and business owners.
So why not head over to switchbladesisterssocialclub.com and go to our Work With Us section. We believe in collaboration over competition. A rising tide raises all ships.
Bye!